TT120 and the Hornby sales strategy. What do we really think of it? Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. A little bit different this time. This time I've bought something. Yes, I invested in a train set, the Hornby TT 120 scale, the new kid on the block. Well, not new kid, it's a revived kid from the Triang days. I don't really do reviews. I'm not really interested in this scale, to be perfectly honest. But I wanted to have a look at it, see what the standard Hornby production was. But in the second half of this video, I think more importantly, is my perception of the Hornby sales strategy and what I perceive will happen in the sort of the N gauge world and the 00HO scales because of the impact of this. So I don't do unboxings. We'll get this out, pop it on the table, see if the train runs, see if the quality's like, and then we're looking a little bit deeper. Now I've decanted the bits from the box. So what have we actually got? Well, we've got a 19 volt transformer running into the little Hornby controller, which seems okay until you get to the power feed, because it's more sensible and safer to have the power goes to the female, not to the male, because if you power this thing up at 12 volts DC and then you start your kids start whacking it out, it can cause small sparks and perhaps do damage to your controller. I mean, that's why the female should always have the power and not the male. Obviously, this then plugs into the power track. Right, so what else have we got? We've got a buffer stop, so there must be a siding. There's a railer to enable you to get your rolling stock on the track. And then we come to the curves. Now, unlike 00, and I'm unsure about N, because 00 is normally sort of 8 curves per circle, let's say. These are 12, so you get 3 tracks per 90 degrees because there's 12 of them. And then we go into the straights. There are 6 straights. Bit of a shame really, because you could have had a longer length of track, but hey ho. Then we've got the power track where you put your DC power in, and there's a little shutter there, sort of, I suppose you poke it in and the shutter makes a better contact. Sadly, when it comes to the instructions, it shows a totally different power track fitting. Hey ho. And then we get a point, and this is a standard sort of train set point. It's a insular frog point. That's it. The section there with the frog is just plastic, and hopefully your locomotive has sufficient pickups to get across this without stalling. It's the smaller sort of 040s and 080s that have the issue. Sorry, 060s that have the issues. And there's one other piece of track, and that's to allow the point track coming off there to come parallel with the rest of it. So there we go. And these are really train set quality stuff, but that's no issue because that's exactly what it says on the box. So moving on to these 4 little beauties. Now, these aren't necessarily train set quality items. I can see these coming into play on a model railway. And what's the difference between a model railway and a train set? A model railway doesn't go away at bedtime. They have a couple of things in common, really. The detail is pretty good. The couplings are all seem pretty good to go, really. However, for those that love sprung buffers, you need to get out more. These do not have sprung buffers, and perhaps neither should they. However, there is no cab crew, and I would like to think that the saving on sprung buffers could have been spent on a fireman and a driver. Would have been quite useful, wouldn't it? But first of all, let's talk purely about these coaches, because there's an interesting thing going on here with Hornby trying to save money, because this coach here is a BSK. This is a brake second corridor, I believe its meaning, which, so there's a sort of a baggage area at one end, and then there's a corridor, and there's some seating there for second class. It's a dreadful thing to say, isn't it, for the non-first class passengers. However, these 2 coaches are almost absolutely identical. The only difference I can see is the running numbers. That's no big deal, I hear you say. Well, actually it is, because they are both corridor composites. That's to say that they are both half first class and half second class. Well, why would you want two identical coaches in a rake of three? It would make perfect sense to have two second class coaches and one corridor brake first. It makes sense, but no, they've done it on the cheap side, and so you get two identical coaches, both first and second class composites, but with different running numbers. Bit of a letdown really, but I suppose that's the price of train sets, isn't it? Right, let's lay some track, put the loco on, and let's get it run in. Now there's always an advantage of using set track over flexible track, and I've used Hornby 4th radius curves on the outsides of my Helix and Pico 3rd radius curves on the inside. And the reason I use Hornby on the outside is because they do the double length, whereas Pico don't. But to see if this track is mechanically perfect, which it should be, I've laid it out in a circle. And all the tracks, because of the web, as I imagine there's a distortion in the webbing, the tracks lean back. So if I can press the insides of the track, there is movement. But I put all the tracks together and I've butted them hard up against each other, so you should have a perfect circle. But we don't, because in this area here, where the tracks come to join, where you join the last two pieces together, there's actually a 3-inch or 75 millimeters in new money overlap, which means to stretch this out to make it perfect, where we go back to a complete circle, there's a distortion now, and that distortion must reflect all the way around the track. So all of the tracks on the inside, I think that'll be, let me just have a tweak of that. Will then carry that gap, and they do. So the track itself is not mechanically perfect. I'd like to say, yeah, that's okay, it's a train set. No, there's no excuse for this. This is poor workmanship. Well, as you can see, I've got my oval of track and I've got my pointer over there running into that buffer stop, and here is, in pride of place, is my lovely little A4. Never owned an A4 before, to be honest. But of course there is a serious side to this, and it's to do with reading the instructions to make sure, because at the end of the day we are plugging into 240 volts AC, you've got your transformer, you've got your controller, and everything should be good to go. And we'd be foolish not to read the instructions. So I start on the class A1, A3 instruction. It says, General, please read right through these instructions, particularly the safety notes on page 8. Okay, particularly the safety notes on page 8. It only goes up to 4. So have I got 4 pages missing, or it's just an appalling technical oversight? On page 4, safety notes, and it goes through the safety notes that you shouldn't be given to play with children under the age of 14, handled with care, indoor use only, blah, blah, blah. But do they not have technical authors at Hornby who check all this stuff? Also says that the loco should give at least 30 minutes in each direction, running in at half speed. So there we go. And the instructions for the train controller are quite straightforward, how to wire it up. And so what I've done is the power comes into this. There's my little knob. There's the power. There's me input. Fiddly thing to get in, that's quite difficult. In the end, I took the track out and poked it in, then refitted the whole track. So, all being well, I should turn this knob and it bursts into life. See if I can bring it back the other way, change the switch. And it is quite noisy. I just make sure that point's going the right way. Yes, it is. Would you say that's half speed? Well, it's not halfway up the dial. So that's halfway up the dial. I'll just whack it up to full in a minute. Yeah, so yeah, that's halfway up the dial. So we'll leave it like that, and I'll come back in half an hour. I'm pretty sure that you can see as the train comes around that distortion in the track. It really is very sort of spongy, to be perfectly honest. And then similarly over here you can see how distorted the rails are. Well, our loco's now been running for 30 minutes in each direction, so we should be good to go. So let's take a look at these coaches now. So this is our corridor composite with first class at this end and second class at the other. You can see the toilet windows are blanked out sort of thing, and it's a pretty nifty looking coach. The detail on here is you can see the blue tags which say that's first class. That's a first class non-smoking. Ooh. Remember those days? That's a second class non-smoking, and the others you're allowed to smoke happily away. What could possibly go wrong with your health? Anyway, let's talk about the couplings. Now, these are known as kinematic couplings, and it's spelt with a K. And when the piece of rolling stock goes around a curve, these couplings expand. And what does that mean? Well, when they're straight and level, as it were, then the coaches should be closer together, and then when you go around a bend they're allowed to expand to avoid buffer lock, but you get a better looking fit whilst you're on the straights. Right, so all we need to do is pop these onto the track using their little railer. Obviously you only use this on a straight piece of track, as it were, and away from the fish plates. Right, and then this just simply rolls down, then hopefully it should go onto your layout. Lovely. Take that away, and then hopefully you can see here where these couple up. Fingers crossed. Nope, that didn't work, did it? Straighten them out. And there we have it. Looking good. And you can see here they are very close together. Good little fit, that. So I shall pop the others on, and then we'll take it for a spin. I failed to mention during the unboxing that there's a little bag of couplings and sort of buffer beam detail, which takes me on to the fact that some people might want to use this TT120 system not as a train set but as more of a small exhibition layout. You could do a sort of a plank type layout, the small end to ends. However, that's not without problems, because Hornby, in its wisdom, have decided not to fit a coupling on the front of this loco. I don't mean there's no coupling, it's missing. I mean, there is no coupling design. I can't see the small NEM style pocket that the rest of these have got on the front. It looks like it will be couplingless, as it were. Is that a big deal? I think this is a Class 1 locomotive pulling in express passengers. Well, not if you want to do a heritage line. If you want a heritage line, then invariably you don't always have a turntable. It sort of leaves the depot, goes up the line to somewhere like Whitby, and then it does a run around, clamps on the other end and runs back again. But it then has authority to run a passenger train tender first, and it's very common on preserved railways. So a little bit of I don't know, they're shooting themselves in the foot really. Perhaps they should have made the facility available so that we could fit an NEM type coupling, with the Tillig coupling to the front. But the fact that this loco cannot run tender first is at a disadvantage. And also you can see on this image here that the discs are in place to show you what type of loco is running. And again, on the front of this loco, it doesn't really show you any detail to fit discs, or there were no discs provided either. So a little bit of a shortcoming there, but not the end of the world. However, it is noteworthy the noise that these coaches make as they go into the curves. Whether that's to do with the lean on the track, we shall see. Anyway, let's do a couple of circuits with the loco and see if they stay on. Now hopefully you can see here that those front pony wheels in the bend are not turning. Now this could be because I've chosen not to screw the track or nail the track down to the baseboard. So I shall quickly do that and see if the problem persists. I thought that I'd also take a look at the loco and see what's going on here, and there appears to be a piece of sticky tape underneath the bogie. I imagine it's put there during build or something to hold something in place, but hopefully that might be part of the problem. I've noticed also that this trailing bogie here doesn't turn, and I think what it is, it does seem free to turn, but there's no flange on it, so it's not getting much friction off the rails. But this cable here that runs from the pickups in the tender into the loco seems to impinge on this axle and is stopping that one turning. Anyway, we'll put it back on the tracks and see if removing this piece of tape and screwing down the end of the track has improved the odds. Now using Pico screws, I've screwed down this curve, but I haven't screwed down this one. And that way I could see whether those first couple of axles were being stopped being from rotated because of the angle of the curve or that little piece of sticky tape. Well, they don't stick anywhere now, so it must have been the sticky tape rather than the pinning down of the board. Of course, if you're going to buy this for your grandson as a train set, then you're going to want to pin it down anyway, and clearly you're not going to pin it just down to hardboard or MDF or whatever. You want to use something like this, a cork base, to absorb some of the noise. But this is noisy. And it's not necessarily the loco either. You know, it's these coaches. They do seem to make a bit of a noise going around these tight. Well, they're not tight curves, are they, for the scale? But we are where we are with these things. Right. What else should we say about it? The decoration of the coaches is, as I mentioned before, is very good. The loco is quite remarkable, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the fitted parts are all there. The livery is crisp. All the tempo printing is great. You know, the hand guardrails, all that sort of stuff. But you know, I'm not going to blow warm air up Hornby's backside, as it were, but that's standard, isn't it? This is what we should expect. We shouldn't expect, oh, this one's in perfect condition, aren't I yucky, you know, aren't I lucky, yippee. No, this should be the standard that we should attain. But nothing wrong with this whatsoever, bar the poor design on that last bogie, which I don't think is to do with that cable. I think it's more to do with the fact that there's nothing on it. It has no flange, so it has no friction, so it just kind of does its own thing, and when it decides to touch the rails it turns, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. Anyway, let's move on to my perception of Hornby's marketing strategy. So TT120, what do I actually think? Well, I think the best place to start is probably from a statement from Helgen, which I'm sure you know about, which came about on the 15th of October last year. Helgen have confirmed that it's to withdraw plans for an all-new TT120 scale range of its model railway products and has cancelled its proposed TT120 Class 31. In an update on the company's UK website, the manufacturer said, "There's been a lot of focus on TT120 scale this week, and obviously we've been paying close attention to its developments. We were gratified to see that our initial trio of locomotive choices for TT were so on the money that all three also appeared in the Hornby range. C'est la vie. Such duplication in a new and so far unknown market produces no winners, only losers. And we were generally excited about the possibility of this new scale, but in the circumstances and with a heavy heart we are ceasing development of our TT120 model range," which I think in itself is quite sad, because instantly you lose any competition if Hornby are the only manufacturer. Having said that, there are a couple of things going on in the background. I know that West Hill Wagon Works are producing TT120 scale accessories, line side stuff, fair play to them. And Pico have the track range in manufacturer. And if you go to Simon's shed and to his YouTube feed and pick out the one on Pico 120 track, you'll find, or he conveys very well, the difference between Hornby track and the Pico track. And this stuff here isn't a shadow on what Pico have produced. It really is good stuff, and of course it's made in Britain. But the points are twice the price, but they're more than twice as good. They really are on the button. They really, if you're going to venture into away from a train set but into model railway, you need to increase your knowledge on what Pico are doing down in Beer. Now, back in November, I went along to the Worley Model Railway show at the NEC. On the Sunday morning, it was quiet, and I popped over to the Hornby stand, and there was Simon Kohler standing quite proudly behind his TT120 stand, and quite rightly so. And I asked Simon, I introduced myself to Simon, and I asked him if he had any worries and sleepless nights and all the rest of it. And he was quite confident in saying, no, he says, I think we're on the money, c'est la vie, and we're all good to go. Great. I asked him where the money was coming from, and he said to me it was new money. Now, I've checked with the Bank of England, there isn't any new money around, there is just money, as you'd expect. So what does he mean by new money? New money is new people coming into the hobby. Well, when new people come into the hobby, they usually come in the second-hand market. They buy something new like a train set, and then the second-hand market, and you bolster it all up, bring in your stuff. In goes your time, your expertise, your skill levels come up, and you become a railway modeller. So introducing TT to the people with new money doesn't seem a very sound approach. Today, the track choice, the loco choice, and the accessory choice is so limited that people, are they going to kneel at the altar of Hornby and make a very serious financial commitment to that brand? Now, a couple of weeks ago, I don't know, 6 weeks or so, I put it out to subscribers of the channel to turn around and say, what do you think of 120? This thing is sort of coming to the boil or the simmer. What do you think? And I got probably about 50 results that were worthy of note, let's say. I'm not going to read them out, but I think I will read two. So please bear with me on this. This one's from a guy called Nigel, and I won't mention surnames in this. Regarding TT120, the models are exquisite, and from a purely business perspective, Hornby are spot on with the direct sales model. They've clearly made a 6 to 7 figure investment into the scale and need to recover it as soon as possible. Whilst we can lament the fact that we can't go to our local model shop, not that there are any near me anyway, and buy them as we would wish to, supporting the shop at the same time, Hornby has to maximise their return on sales, and they can't do this by sharing it with wholesalers and traders. On a negative point, having seen them at Worley, they just seem too close to N-gauge. From a European perspective, it's fine because they sit bang in the middle of HO and N, but as far as the UK is concerned, with our overscale 00 and N models, 3mm TT is the halfway house, not TT120. Whether there's a big enough differential between TT120 and N, only time will tell. Overall, I'd really like to see Hornby succeed, if only to silence all of the naysayers that declare that railway modelling is dead. Fair point, good stuff. Richard, last one honestly. I think the reintroduction of TT is a good idea in principle. I do question the wisdom of excluding model shops and large retailers from stocking and selling the product. I think they are an essential cornerstone of the hobby. But then, if you look at who's leading the Hornby in this quest for market dominance, i.e. Simon Kohler, he can be a bit radical on occasions. I think this venture, as it is, will end in tears. The concept of TT is great. I might even be tempted to return to the hobby and build a small layout, although having invested heavily in O-gauge, I then really regretted my decision. Clearly, the efforts of Hornby are to increase profit margins by cutting out the retailers. Profit does not necessarily follow what, in my humble opinion, is an unsound decision. We wait the results, but I'm mighty glad that I'm not a Hornby shareholder. Whew. Interesting points of view, and there are numerous points like this that I've received and replied to everyone as I normally would. What's my opinion then? Scratching around with figures, please don't believe these percentages because I can guarantee they're wrong. But if I was to turn around and say what percentage of the market is to what scale, etc. Let's say that O gauge is 10%, N gauge is 20%. Hornby's got 25, Bachmann's got 25, and the others have got 20. That's sort of Helgian and Dapol sort of thing. So that's where the market share is. But of course the N gauge 20% isn't a Hornby 20%. They don't make N gauge. You know, this is the Graham Farish's sort of territory. Similarly with O gauge, that's more of your Helgian types. So if Hornby, with a current market share of, I'm making this up, 25%, if this does extremely well, their market share might well go up to 35, say 40%. Of course, they will lose in their 00 sector, but then you might consider that they're marking time anyway, looking at last catalogue, because they're just basically catching up with flamboyant promises of production in the past. There's only a couple of new tooled locos coming through. Of course, if Hornby becomes a winner, there must be losers. So if the O gauge people kind of only lose, say, 10 down to say 8%, and the 00 market compresses, that, as I said, the Hornby will lose a market share, but more importantly, Bachmann will lose their market share, increasing the market share to TT120. But of course, if you're coming into the hobby now, there is nothing available on eBay. There is nowhere to go. You can't buy them off your mate. If you go to a model railway club, nobody's got any stuff. It's either hornby.com or nothing at all. And so Hornby can now dictate their price, and there is no profit for the retailer, the wholesaler or whatever. It's just Hornby's money. But what does that do to our hobby on a more of a global feel, or in a UK type feel? Well, there are a few model shops around here, and if I owned them and I was a Hornby stockist and I could afford to do it, I'd chuck it all out. I would try to return every piece of Hornby kit that I was in my possession, because if they won't let me stock 120, then why should I stock the rest of it, which is basically stock they're just trying to move on and wash away. You know, the old stuff that's no, you know, it's out of production. I mean, they've even brought back I think it was a Caledonian 123 that I owned as a child, and I'm 64. You know, you don't need O-level maths to work out how old that tooling and moulds and all that sort of stuff that goes with that are. It's just a very old production run. So in my opinion is, yep, if you want to buy your kids a train set, then you buy them a train set, nail it down, make sure the board is bigger than this. Don't put it on a board that's, you know, very compressed, because it's not about trains, it's about the whole ensemble, that the event, the feel of model railways, the trees, the building, the interaction, the people, all that, the imagination we were trying to bring on in young people. So in the big scheme of things, where exactly does TT120 fit? Well, it fits here, and as you can see, its scale is so much closer to N than 00. It really isn't that much bigger. So there we have it. My views on the Hornby TT120 Easterner train set, and my views also of the Hornby sales strategy. You may agree or disagree, but please leave a comment in the comment section down below, and perhaps give the video a thumbs up. In the meantime, I'd like to thank my patrons as usual. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and a video here and here. See you in 2 weeks' time back on the layout. Thanks a lot, take care, bye bye.